Our next speaker is Dr. Maitra Varuni. She is joining us from IIT Madras, currently from her hometown in Vizag. Dr. Maitra Varuni did her master's from IIT Kanpur and then her PhD from IIT Madras with Professor Parag Ravindran. She then did her postdoc from Israel Technion with Professor Volok. She is going to talk to us about crack localization in soft materials. So Dr. Maitra will have about 30 minutes. I request her to plan her talk for 25 minutes so that there are 5 minutes left for questions. And her talk will be followed by Dr. Costanza Armanini from Khalifa University. And after an hour, we'll have Professor Sima talk to us. So again, I encourage the audience to use the Q&A feature to ask questions. I will stop sharing my screen now and request Dr. Maitra Varuni to begin her talk.
Good evening to one and all. First, I thank Professor Volok and Professor Ramcharan for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this Young Researchers Meet being organized in honor of Professor K.R. Yogendra Simha, and I would like to convey my best wishes to Professor Simha. Today, I am here to talk about crack localization in soft materials. As we know, soft materials exhibit fundamentally different fracture characteristics. Highly deformable soft materials like synthetic gels and elastomers are used in various applications such as flexible electronics, soft robotics, in drug delivery and tissue engineering. And these elastomers are also widely used in the applications of energy absorption. So the study of fracture behavior of these highly deformable soft materials is of great practical significance. Failure of soft materials can lead to fatal disasters. So we illustrate this point here through these figures. This figure on the left shows the April 2010 explosion and the subsequent oil leak at the offshore oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. It was found that the failure of formed concrete, a soft material that was used in the oil well, triggered this oil spill and explosion. And this figure on the right shows the failure of rubber bearings which were used for seismic isolation of bridge structures in Tokyo. So it is necessary to predict the onset of damage which is a precursor to failure in order to ensure the safety of these structures. So in this presentation, we'll focus on finding the onset of damage in quasi-brittle soft materials. All materials cannot be classified into entirely ductile or entirely brittle. Some brittle heterogeneous materials such as rock, concrete, ice, ceramics, various composites, and some soft materials like synthetic hydrogels, elastomers, and biological tissues come under this category of quasi-brittle materials. Quasi-brittle structures exhibit large macroscopic crack growth prior to failure. These structures do not follow linear elastic fracture mechanics, and hence nonlinear fracture mechanics is needed to study their fracture behavior. These quasi-brittle materials undergo moderate hardening prior to the attainment of ultimate tensile strength and are characterized by post-peak softening with a rounded peak as shown in this figure. This strain softening is basically the degradation in material stiffness with increasing strain and is observed at a continuum level in damaged quasi-brittle materials. So let's now turn to the modeling of this damage onset in these quasi-brittle materials by addressing their constitutive behavior of nonlinear brittle elasticity. As we know, a hyperelastic constitutive model is developed to describe the nonlinear elastic response and derives the stress-strain relation for the elastic material from a strain energy density function. Traditional hyperelastic models are aimed at describing the intact material behavior and allow for unlimited increase in strain energy. However, we know that no real material can accumulate unlimited strain energy, and materials start to exhibit instabilities after reaching a certain critical value of strain energy, and they fail eventually. The two approaches that are used in literature to model bulk failure are the strength of materials approach and the continuum damage mechanics approach. According to strength of materials approach, a global failure is said to have occurred when a local failure criterion is satisfied at a material point. And the continuum damage mechanics approach allows for global failure modeling and is based on the introduction of internal damage variables into the constitutive theory. We know that these internal damage variables follow a certain damage evolution equation. A physically motivated alternative to this continuum damage mechanics approach, which models the failure related with bond rupture, called virtual internal bond method, was proposed by Klein. This virtual internal bond method is a multi-scale method which mixes atomistic and continuum descriptions. The continuum atomistic linkage led to the formulation of macroscopic strain energy potentials, which allow for modeling strain softening and strain localization. This method is very effective at small length scales where purely atomistic analysis is needed. However, its computer implementation in macroscopic failure problems is numerically involved, as it demands averaging of the interatomic potentials over a representative volume. So, in order to overcome the computational intensity of this method while preserving its sound physical basis, Volokh has proposed softening hyperelasticity approach. This approach models failure by introducing energy limiters into the expression for strain energy density function. And this idea of softening hyperelasticity is essentially an extension of the description for two particle separation to a larger number of particles in a representative volume of the continuum. And this number of physical particles in the representative volume is limited. So the average bond energy of these particles is limited. Consequently, the strain energy density on the macroscopic scale should also be limited. So we formulate an expression for the strain energy density function which includes energy limiters. This energy limiter is the average bond energy or the failure energy, which is denoted by phi as shown in this figure. These limiters automatically constrain the permissible stresses and induce strain softening as shown in this stress strain curve. So this leads us to our objective of developing a constitutive theory incorporating failure using the energy limiter approach and predicting the onset of localized cracks by examining the mathematical condition of strong ellipticity. So here we formulate an expression for the strain energy density function to enforce material failure description. Here this phi is the energy limiter, which is as discussed before, and this gamma is the upper incomplete gamma function, and this W is the strain energy density to describe the intact material behavior without failure, and this M is the model parameter which controls the sharpness of transition to failure on the stress strain curve. The onset of localized damage is violated it occurs when the condition of strong ellipticity is violated. So, and this strong ellipticity, here we associate the loss of strong ellipticity of the incremental initial boundary value problem with the onset of localized damage. So these are the incremental equations in Eulerian form, and this equation 2 gives the balance of linear momentum. Here y tilde is the incremental displacement vector which is superimposed onto the displacement y, and this sigma tilde is the incremental Cauchy stress tensor, and this equation 3 gives the balance of angular momentum. Here L tilde is the incremental velocity gradient. And this incremental Cauchy stress tensor for an incompressible material is given by this equation 4. Here this A is the fourth order elasticity tensor, and these two terms account for the incompressibility. This pi is the Lagrange multiplier, and this pi tilde is the incremental Lagrange multiplier. And this equation 5 is the incompressibility condition in its incremental form. And the elasticity tensor A in its component form is given by this equation as shown here. This F is the deformation gradient from the undeformed configuration of the body to the deformed configuration. This psi is the strain energy density function incorporating failure, which is as given by this equation 4, equation 1. So when this strain energy density psi is function of only first strain invariant I1, this elasticity tensor in its component form is as given by this equation 7. Here this psi11 and psi1 are the second and first derivatives of the strain energy psi with respect to the first strain invariant I1. This I1 is nothing but trace of the left Cauchy strain tensor B, which is defined as FF transpose, where F is the deformation gradient. And the solution for this incremental initial boundary value problem in the form of traveling plane waves is as given by this equation 8 as shown here for incremental displacement vector y tilde and incremental Lagrange multiplier pi tilde. Here this g is a function of argument s dot y minus omega t, where omega is the wave speed of the superimposed wave, and s is the unit vector in the direction of the wave propagation, and this r is the unit vector in the direction of wave polarization. And here in this equation for Lagrange multiplier pi tilde, this gamma is the amplitude of the incremental Lagrange multiplier, and this g dash is the derivative of the function g with respect to its argument. So now we calculate this incremental velocity gradient L tilde from its definition F tilde F inverse using this expression for y tilde. And then we substitute this incremental velocity gradient back into this equation for the Cauchy stress tensor, and we obtain the incremental Cauchy stress. Then we substitute this incremental Cauchy stress tensor and this y tilde from equation 8 back into the equation for balance of linear momentum 2 to obtain this equation 9. Here this term capital lambda, which is a function of the unit vector in wave propagation direction S, is called the acoustic tensor, which is given in its component form by equation 10. So then we plug in this incremental velocity gradient L tilde back into the incompressibility condition equation 5, and we obtain this orthogonal relation between the unit vectors R and S. So now we go back to this equation 9 and take scalar product with this unit vector in the wave polarization direction R, and we use this incompressibility condition, and we obtain this equation 12 for the wave speed, and this wave speed is always positive for the condition of strong ellipticity to be satisfied. So, and this condition of strong ellipticity is violated for the vanishing wave speed, that is when this rho omega square becomes 0. This physically means the inability of the material to propagate a superimposed wave, as crack tends to localize in a direction perpendicular to a possible wave direction. So when the specific form of this strain energy psi is a function of only first strain invariant, we already calculated the incremental form of this elasticity tensor, which we plug in to this acoustic tensor to obtain its incremental form. And this is the tensorial form for the acoustic tensor. And now we substitute this acoustic tensor back into the equation 12, which is this condition of strong ellipticity, and we obtain this specific form for the speed of plane wave. And this equation is valid only for incompressible materials and when the strain energy density is function of only first strain invariant. In general, for a compressible case, the expressions for incremental Cauchy stress tensor and the elasticity tensor in component form are as shown here. And this is a specific form for the speed of plane wave when strain energy density is function of only first and third strain invariants, I1 and I3. Here these psi33 and psi3 are the second and first derivatives with respect to the third strain invariant I3, and the psi13 is a mixed derivative with respect to the first and third strain invariants, and this J is the square root of the third strain invariant I3. So this is the equation for the wave speed for a general compressible case. So next we analyze the onset of localized cracks in rubber bearings under combined compression and shear, as the rubber bearings that are used for seismic isolation are often compressed by the weight of the supported structure and are also prone to large shear deformations during earthquakes. And in order to describe the intact material behavior, we use this incompressible U model for this strain energy density W for intact material behavior, and we obtain these model parameters by matching this model response to the experimental data of natural rubber vulcanisite in uniaxial tension as obtained by Hamdi and his colleagues. So this figure shows the Cauchy stress versus stretch response. This blue dashed line is the model without failure. This is for the intact material behavior. And this red solid line shows the model with failure. And this is the equation of combined compression and shear for an incompressible material. So here this gamma is the amount of shear strain, and this lambda is the amount of compressive stretch. So from this equation of motion, we calculate the deformation gradient F, and from which we get the left Cauchy strain tensor B. Then these are the specific forms for the unit vectors in the directions of wave propagation and wave polarization. Here alpha is the angle in x1, x2 plane, and this particular form is chosen for these unit vectors such that the incompressibility condition r dot s equal to 0 is satisfied. Now we plug in these specific forms of R and S and the calculated left Cauchy strain tensor B into this equation for the wave speed in an incompressible material, and we obtain this equation number 20. So here now we plug in for the derivatives of the strain energy density incorporating failure in terms of the derivatives of the strain energy for the intact material behavior W11 and W1, and we get the mixed conditions where material instability sets in, F1 equal to 0 and F2 equal to 0. Here this F2 is the exponential function, And we can see that it does not depend on alpha, which is the orientation of the superimposed wave. And this F1 depends on alpha. And here we consider this F1 to be an implicit function of the shear strain gamma and orientation of the superimposed wave alpha for varying compressive stretch lambda. And we plot these split conditions graphically as shown in this figure on the left. Here these horizontal lines represent the F2 equal to 0 curve, and these other three curves are for F1 equal to 0. And we can see that the lowest amount of shear strain occurs at an angle of alpha of 90 degrees and 270 degrees. That is to say that crack localizes in a horizontal direction or x1 axis. And these three sets of curves are for three different values of compressive stretch lambda, 1, 0.7 and 0.4. And we can see from this figure that as we increase the compression, that is when lambda equal to 0.4, the critical shear strain magnitude is the highest. And this figure on the right shows the shear stress versus shear strain curve for different compressive stretch values, and these limit points show the loss of strong elasticity. And we can see that with increase in compression, the onset of damage is delayed. So next, another problem of practical interest is to study the onset of damage in a sheet of aneurysm material under equibiaxial tension. Here, in order to describe the intact material behavior, we use the reduced U model. And here also we get these model parameters from the fit to experimental data of abdominal aortic aneurysm material in uniaxial tension as obtained by Ralhwan and Ward. And this figure shows the Cauchy stress versus stretch for the model and experimental data. This blue line is for the model, and these red triangles represent the experimental data. And this equation for equibiaxial tension for an incompressible material. So by following the same procedure as for the case of rubber bearings, we arrive at these split conditions. Here F2, the exponential function, does not depend on alpha, and F1 also does not depend on alpha in case of equibiaxial tension of an isotropic material. So here we also see that this F1 is always positive under tension. So the condition of strong ellipticity is violated only when this exponential function F2 becomes 0. So we show this convergence of the exponential function in this figure. Here this blue star denotes the critical amount of stress that is associated with the onset of localized damage. So in both the problems that we considered now, we have imposed incompressibility constraint. So let's now relax this incompressibility constraint and study the onset of damage in a sheet of slightly compressible material. When this material is subjected to different cases of uniaxial tension, shear strain, and equibiaxial tension. So this W is the strain energy density for the intact material behavior. So here this I3 is the third strain invariant, and this capital K is the bulk modulus. And this value of the bulk modulus is obtained such that the stress strain response for this slightly compressible material and for the stress strain response for the incompressible material coincide.
Dr. Maitra Varuni, just wanted to give you a heads up. You're almost out of time. I would like to give the audience a little bit of time to ask questions. I have a few. You may conclude as you think is appropriate.
Yeah, okay. So we use the expression for the wave speed and the specific forms of unit vectors, and we obtain the slip conditions in the case of compressible material when we superimpose longitudinal pressure waves. Here we have plotted lambda 1 versus alpha, and in case of equibiaxial tension, we can see that for this green line, the localized track does not have any preferred direction, whereas in the case of uniaxial tension fluid phase, this critical value occurs at alpha equal to 0 degrees, and this means that track localizes in a direction perpendicular to the applied stress lambda 1. And when we impose incompressibility constraints, we obtain these conditions which we plot here. So you can see the difference between the compressible and incompressible cases here. That is, in the case of uniaxial tension and fluid phase, the critical value of stress lambda 1 occurs when alpha is around 82 degrees, which is to say that track localizes in an inclined direction. So this is counterintuitive, as we would expect tracks to localize in a direction perpendicular to the applied stress. So it should be emphasized that imposing incompressibility constraints sorts out the longitudinal waves, and we lose the possibility to predict the cracks associated with these longitudinal pressure waves. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Maitra Varuni. You gave us a lot of material to digest. If the audience has questions, you could either raise your hand or type it in, because we're almost close to the time for the next talk. In the meantime, I have a question. If you go back to equation 1, it was on slide number 7, I think. I feel that that's the equation that I should understand, right? So could you just help me understand what's the motivation behind this form of the strain energy psi?
Here we actually introduce this energy limited psi, which is the constant cellular energy. Means we impose a limit on the strain energy that can be stored in the hyperelastic material, and we choose this gamma function and this particular form so that
okay. So is there any broad similarity between this approach and the more popular one, which is the phase field models for damage or fracture? Is there some similarity in terms of introducing additional parameters to incorporate damage? Because I'm wondering, where does localization come, right? In phase field models, often you see some explicit length scale, and that kind of tells you that there could be localization. In this case, I'm unable to see a length scale, at least without understanding what is phi and m.
M is the parameter which controls the sharpness of the transition. Like if we want a more brittle rupture, we should use a higher value of M. Mm-hmm. And for a more quasi-brittle rupture, we can reduce the value of M.
Okay. If the audience has any questions, I can. If not, we are actually just out of time. Thank you very much for your talk. We appreciate your participation. I hope that you will stay with us for the remainder of this symposium. Thanks very much.
Thank you.